Oh, damn, okay. Yeah, okay.
G'day, Banjo from Jungle Masters again. As you can tell, I'm not in the jungle today. I've had a number of people quite interested in the meals that I prepare when I head into the bush, and so I thought what I'd do today, I'm going out later today. I'll be staying out overnight. I will have an early lunch here. I'll be in the bush for dinner tonight. I'll also be in the bush for breakfast, obviously. And then I'll probably be back here for lunch. So I need to prepare 2 meals, or at least take 2 meals with me, being dinner and breakfast. First of all, what I'd like to do is, just before we start putting the meal together, is show you some of the ingredients I use. Now, a lot of you will be familiar with the meals that come pre-prepared by companies similar to this one. The only thing I purchase from the camping shops is the freeze-dried beef mince. Everything else I just get from the supermarket, and it's all dehydrated or lightweight. So the fried shallots aren't dehydrated, but they're all the moisture's fried out of them. Gives you a lovely onion flavour, especially with the mince. Things like the sliced shiitake mushrooms you can find in the Asian section. Got dehydrated peas. They're just usually with your like your split peas and your pearl barley and that sort of thing. And if you're very lucky, you might find some Deb potato, which is excellent for thickening, as well as adding the potato to your mix. There's a few other little things. Flavour-wise, my primary source of flavour is a chicken stock powder, and I like the Asian ones. They have a really nice flavour, and a lot of them actually have real chicken in them. Most of the other ones you get don't actually have any chicken in it. Some of the other goodies you can use for flavouring, I keep the flavour sachets out of any of the 2-minute noodle packets that I might use, or that the family uses. We put the sachets aside and they can be added to the meal. Another item you may find in some specialist stores is bonito. It's shaved bonito flakes. It's a Japanese thing. They use it a lot as seasoning in their meals. It can also add a lovely fishy background. Also Japanese is the little sachets of miso soup, usually with a bit of seaweed in there. They're excellent for flavouring, but they're also really good just as a soup on their own. So all you have to do is boil the water, chuck it in, stir it and drink. Breakfast wise, I like the nut bars, or in this case a seed and plant protein bar. High in protein. I try and look for the ones that have a fairly low GI. I don't like the ones with chocolate in them. I don't like the ones that are terribly high in sugar. I'm looking for long-lasting energy rather than a burst of energy. If I want a burst of energy, I will also be carrying some of these. The chocolate with a shell is very good. It releases energy very quickly. But because it's got the shell on it, it'll stand up to high temperatures without refrigeration. You won't end up with a big blob of melted chocolate. So that's essentially what I'll be using. Now, because I use a lot of these, and I didn't mention the couscous. The couscous, which you can see I've already transferred over into a Tupperware container, or a plastic container, is usually what I finish with when I put the meal together. The couscous absorbs a lot of moisture, so by adding the couscous, it'll thicken whatever you're cooking and turn it from a soup into something that's easier to eat with a spoon. If you put too much water in, you end up with something like a porridge. If you don't put enough moisture in, you'll find things like the peas can be a little bit chewy, the mushrooms can be a little bit chewy, and the couscous is a trifle underdone, but it won't do you any harm. But it will soak up any moisture that's left as the others hydrate, the beef and the vegetables hydrate. The couscous will soak up the remainder, so you've not got pooled moisture in the bottom of your belly when you're eating. You can just scoop it all up as a solid. So, to actually putting the evening meal together, well, we use one of these fantastic reusable, waterproof, resealable containers, also known as a Ziploc bag. It's pretty straightforward. It's basically a matter of just spooning it in. So when I get out in the bush, and I'll do another one, not too many of the peas left, we'll throw some peas in. They do swell, so that actually turns out to be quite a lot of peas. All of these things you need to remember will gain weight and mass as they rehydrate. Oh, now here's a good tip. In this is the open packet of freeze-dried beef I'm using currently. You'll see I've thrown in a couple of these silica gel packs. Very good for any of these things. You'll see the mushrooms, they actually come with one. So I keep the silica gel pack in the container that I transfer the mushrooms into when I open them. These will absorb the extra moisture before whatever's in the packet will, and that just stops the contents from going mouldy, especially here in the wet tropics. It stops the contents going mouldy in between uses. This particular beef I've had open for quite some time. Because there's no moisture in there, and because thanks to these, when I seal it, it soaks up any extra moisture in there. That freeze-dried mince, even though the bag's been opened, I opened this probably 2 or 3 months ago, and still nothing wrong with it. It's not gone rancid or anything, it's right to use. So we'll put those to the side. Oh, by the way, you can recharge them by putting them in the oven to dry them out, but don't put them in a hot oven. Put them in an oven that's almost cool and just let it sit in there as it cools. Pull them out before it's completely at room temperature. Doesn't take much to bake the moisture out of the silica gel, but just be aware a lot of these packets, the glue they use is a heat glue. So you may find if you put it in the oven and the oven's too hot, the packet comes apart. If that happens, you can always put them in a little cloth bag or something similar. You can open a tea bag and reseal it with a staple, and that sits perfectly well. You don't want the silica gel in your food, it's poisonous. That's why they have do not eat written all over them. So we'll chuck some beef in here. Now, I'm a meat with every meal man. I love my protein, especially when I'm in the bush. Protein is good for the body to, now I'm no nutritionist, but I'm told protein is very good for the body to repair some of the damage you will have done in the exercise while you're in the bush, but it's also a slow release energy source. So you'll see quite a few of the things that I add are high in protein. So we've got peas in there, we've got mince in there. What else can we put in? Well, here's the couscous. I'll save that for last. Another source of protein, and what gives it a nice creamy richness, is just your normal milk powder. It's powdered milk. Used to use it quite a bit when I was a kid when fresh milk wasn't available. It's a little bit harder to find these days because we have the Tetra Pak milk, the UHT, ultra heat treated milk. But you can still find milk powder around, and by putting it in, it gives it a nice creamy richness as well. So I'll chuck a couple of spoonsful in there. It's also high in protein, in particular animal proteins. Animal proteins are more complex than the plant proteins such as you might find in mushrooms, so they'll keep you from getting hungry for longer. Now the mushrooms, I've done the bulk of them already. When they turn up, they're sliced and dried, such as you can see there. I then in turn slice them even finer just with a pair of normal scissors, and what that does is it allows them to rehydrate quickly. If you don't slice them up, what you'll probably find is your bits of mushroom, if they're larger, remain quite tough. The cooking process is by soaking. I don't actually cook when I'm out there. This is the cooking now. I combine all the ingredients now, and all I do out in the field is add water. So we'll chuck some mushrooms in, but again they're high in protein, although it's plant protein. And the onion, I love onion, and especially onion and beef goes together really well. So this is that fried shallot I showed you before. Again, it's just in a resealable container, and it does impart a lovely onion flavour to the dish. So we'll chuck that in, and then just to finish, I'll put in some couscous to, like I said, soak up the juices. So again, couscous swells incredibly when it gets wet, so it doesn't take a lot of couscous to soak up any of the extra moisture. When I cook this, I will probably add it to, and you'll have to forgive me, the billy set I use is Imperial. It's marked in ounces, so I will fill this to approximately the 12-ounce mark. Oh, hello, there's some old stuff. I'll fill it to approximately the 12-ounce mark, so if we see on the outside, That's to that level. So it'll probably be slightly more than that. So what's that say? 400 ml. Okay, so probably about the 400 ml mark. Fill it up, boil the water, chuck that in, and put the lid back on it and let it sit for 10 minutes before I then come back and eat it. Because everything's fine like that, I can eat it with a spoon, so I've only got to carry a spoon. Now, the billy is what I actually use as my lunchbox. You can see I carry my food in my billy. So for tomorrow, or for tonight and tomorrow, I've got tomorrow night's dinner. I've got dessert and extensively emergency supplies of energy. I have some miso soups for snack. I can also use them for flavouring. Likewise, I might just, oh, that's what I didn't put in here, flavouring. I've got all the ingredients but no seasoning. So we'll put the lid back on that. My favourite, the chicken. I mean, that will be reasonably flavourful already with the vegetables and onion and meat, etc. But there's no salt in there, and I do like a bit of salt. I will be perspiring quite heavily. This particular chicken powder is very high in salt, so I'll only use about a teaspoon in there, which is probably the equivalent of about half a teaspoon of salt, which I think is quite a bit of salt. So we'll pop that in there. And the other thing I will do is I will go and find my noodle packet flavours, and if I feel like it at the time and I want a bit more chilli flavour, I can chuck that in it when I make it as well. So I'll seal that back up again. That goes in there. I've got my chocolates in there, I've got my miso in there, I'll put some flavours in there, and I'll put 2 of the nut bars, and they'll be my breakfast. So that all sits in there, the lid goes on top, it goes back in the bag, and my food is packed and ready to travel. Unfortunately, my kitchen's a mess, so what I'll do is I'll go now and clean up the kitchen, but you don't have to hang around to watch that. I'll see you next time. Bye.